Okay, welcome everybody. I sent out a diagram that I made, and I also added a little bit to the sources, but we're not really going to focus on the sources so much as we're going to focus on the Shulchan Aruch itself. We're going to start right with the Shulchan Aruch because there's a lot of stuff to go through, and hopefully we'll see a lot of stuff. So take out your Shulchan Aruchs, and I guess we'll start on Sif Daled. Yeah. I'm waiting for just everybody to get ready. Noah, maybe you want to start us off.
I can do that. All right. Rov chaniyot mochrot basar shchuta u'miut mochrot basar nevela lakach me'achat mehen ve'eno yodea ezo mehen lakach v'nitarva b'acherot ve'eno nikeret v'tila berov mishun sfeik sfeika. So
Wait. You know what? Actually, I take it back.
Okay.
I want to start in Gimel.
Gimel. Okay.
I want to go back to
Go to
Gimel.
Gimel first.
Really, it goes together. Sorry. So let's go back to Gimel. And you can look at my picture that I have there. Because I needed to draw these pictures just to keep everything clear.
All right, I'm going to pull up your diagrams.
The first page is, I say, like the Machaber.
Okay. Shall I read now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Tisha chaniyot mochrot basar shchuta ve'achat mocheret basar nevela lakach me'achat mehen ve'en yadua me'eze mehen lakach harei ze asor shekol kabu k'mechza dame. So there are 9 stores that sell kosher meat, and 1 store that sells non-kosher meat, and a person buys from one of the stores, but he doesn't know from which store he bought. Then that piece of meat is forbidden because it's considered fixed, it's considered like standing, and when it's kavua, it's considered a 50-50, in which case it's asur.
Right. Wait. Yeah. So let's look at just a second. Let me pull up the diagram. Is it here? Just a second. Why don't I see it? Here we go. Zoom. So here's my great drawing. And here is this guy who's got this meat in his hands. This is his shopping bag. And he doesn't know where he got it from. Kosher, nevela. That's my Siman. He doesn't know where he got it from. He's got a safek, or he's got a question in his head. Where did I get it from? So that's asur. That's what Mechaber just said. Okay. So continue.
Oh, sorry. Basar hanimsa bashuk o biyad oved kochavim mutar. But if the meat was found in the market or on the street, or in the hands of a non-Jew, it's permitted. Kevan sherov hachaniyot mochrot basar shchuta dechol deparish meruba parish zehu din Torah. So since the majority of stores sells kosher meat, then we apply the principle that anything that is separated from the majority.
So that's this picture here. Here he found it in the shuk, or he found it in the hands of a goy. That's a goy. He's a little taller. And
it's because he's shaped like a cross. That's how you know he's a goy.
Exactly. He's shaped like a cross. Also, I thought that was supposed to be he has a mustache. So he found it in the hands of a goy or in the shuk, and he's got to keep on, see. And therefore, it's mechaber Torah mutter. Rabbanan, I don't know if we read that yet, but I wrote here,
Didn't read that
Rabbanan
yet.
asur. So read that.
Aval chachamim asruhu af al pi shekol shochtim v'chol mochrim Yisrael. But the rabbis forbade it, even though all of the slaughterers and all of the sellers are Jewish.
Right, and this is based on what din? Why is it asur? What do they call that?
Basar ne'elam me'ayin.
Exactly. In other words, it's just you can't have anything that was ne'elam. And it's totally. That's why he says even if everybody is kosher, we should call a shoktim but call a mochrim Yisrael. In other words, even if everything is kosher, it's not tesha and one. It's 9. If it's all 10 are kosher. Okay, so that's that din. Now, what does the Ramah say?
Vayen le'el siman samech gimel v'ha damrinan kol de parish meruba parish hainu shelo piresh lefanenu aval im piresh lefanenu o ro'eh she'oved kochavim lachu have ki'ilu lacho misham biado. So the Ramah clarifies that when we say kol de parish meruba parish, that's when it didn't get separated in front of us. But when it did get separated before us, or that we saw the Oved Kochavim buying it, then it's considered as if he bought it and it's in his hand, meaning it then becomes a case of kavua.
Right. So, in other words, he's saying, well, what is the case? In other words, isn't that the whole din? There's a kasha kind of. What is the chiddush of the Ramah? The whole din of kavua is that it's only mutter if it's not lefanenu. In other words, that's what kavua is. Kavua means we were in the store. It was in front of us. We went into the store and took it out. And we find it on the street. That's, in other words, what the Mechaber said. We find it on the street. Wait, where was it?
I don't think it's necessarily like a contradiction with the Mechaber. It's just a clarification, you know?
But here it's not lefanenu, and it's mutter. So what is he telling us? That we said is mutter is only it's not lefanenu. Well, that's what Mechaber already said. This is not lefanenu.
I think what he's clarifying is the case where I didn't go in and get it from the store myself, but I saw the goy go in and get it, as opposed to
that is right. So here, so that's but again, if you exactly, you might think that if doing it not by your own hand would already make it like it's poresh. It came out. You didn't do it. So that's what I drew here. What does it say? Nevela? Oh no, kosher.
There's no nafkamina lamase, but there is a nafkamina about the status of the act. Meaning, seemingly according to the Ramah, such an act would be asur deoraita, while Mechaber, if you want to read them in machloka with each other, would only be d'Rabbanan.
Well, wait. Shelo lefanenu means you did it yourself. So the Mechaber says asur deoraita also. Depend. I mean, unless
right, but
I mean, I'm saying, isn't lo lefanenu the definition of kavua? Lo lefanenu, kind of, that's what it means. Lo lefanenu means, lifanenu. Sorry, lifanenu is kavua. I went into the shop and I got it, so it was lifani. It was in front of me. I did it. I went in.
Yeah, I think that. I think this was what Yavni was saying. So I'm sorry if I'm repeating it, but like I think the other way you would formulate it, like that you could say the Havamid and the Haver could be lo biyadenu, right? That we didn't do the separation, right, with our hands.
So that's what the Aruch HaShulchan says. The Aruch HaShulchan says you might think that if it wasn't done by your own hands, then it's like lo lefanenu. And he's coming to teach you. When he says lo lefanenu, he says. He's saying it has to be lo lefanenu. In other words, it has to be not only not by your hands, but also not by somebody who's like your shliach or that you even observe. You might think that once it's not by my hand, that's called lo lefanenu. In other words, I didn't go in, I didn't touch it, I just saw. So here's the case. Here's the guy again, And I sort of added this. You have to say that the goy doesn't remember where he got it from, or that we don't believe him, but somehow he doesn't know, and we're watching him. Now, if we're watching him, I thought about this. It has to be that also we don't remember what we saw. Because if we remembered what we saw, then obviously it would be us, or if it came from there, mutter if it came from there. I mean, if we saw him, took it from the kosher place, then it's obviously mutter, right? I mean, that's a we're mashkiach. So it must be that we saw it, that's my picture of seeing, and we don't remember anymore. But it was in front of me, so it's kavua. That's what he's saying. It's because it was in front of me, and I saw it, even though I don't remember seeing it. I mean, that's the way it came out. That's the way I could only figure out like that. Or another case would be, that was the case where it's a goy. But then there's also two cases. There's a case where it's not a goy. I found it on the street. So it must be, I found it on the street and I saw it fall out of the shop. I saw it roll out of the shop. That's the dotted line. It sort of rolled out of the shop and it got there. And I saw it. But again, I don't remember, because if I remembered, then it wouldn't be, the whole din wouldn't get started. So in that case also must. Is that, you guys agree with that? I don't think there's any other way to understand it. So those are the cases. Now, the truth is I have this. All right, so now let's see if we can find, I mentioned the Ran. Well, the Ran, well, I'll just say it outside. The Ran says, the Ran's explanation of why kavu is mutter is because it's a chiddush. And then lemafreya lo. In other words, because that's a case of, what's the case of lemafreya? Well, do I have it here? When the Isser is nolad acharei aprisha. In other words, I think, oh, that's this case. Sorry, I missed this case here. There's also this case. This is the Ra'az case. And the Ran is going to argue on the Ra'az. So this is this case where you have kosher, 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 and you think it's kosher, and you take it out, and you don't remember where you took it from. And then it turns out that in one of the stores, it's actually Nevela. So on that, the Ra'az says Asur.
That's Sif Hay, right? That's going to be Sif Hay?
That's going to be Sif Hay? Okay, maybe that's Sif Hay. But I think it's brought here. All right, so let's wait. We can look at look at Yud Zayin in the Shach. So he says, read the beginning of Yud Zayin. No.
Sure. Okay. Hanimsa chule davka kan bechanut ha'achat nikeret midei atzma. Aval heicha diyadua sheyesh treifa achat bechanut lo noda be'ezeh chanut afal gav de hari kavua kemo shekatafti v'si katan yadalid. So this is only in a case where it's one of the stores that aren't identified onto itself. But if it's known that there is a treifa piece of meat in one of the stores, but you don't know which stores we're talking about, then even though it's considered kavua, as I wrote above. Mikom makom im piresh shelo b'fanav nireh de la rosh v'siato de asrei lakaman seif katan lamed vav gabe kavua de chaticha haroya li chabed piresh memela afagav de parish meruba parish migzera de shema yikach mina kavua. So nevertheless, if he separated out in front of him, if he separated out and wasn't in front of him, it appears that according to the Rosh and his supporters who forbade that piece of meat, it's because it's adequately.
Wait, I lost you. Wait, is that the case? Oh, that's this case. I think that's this case. Isn't that this case? Let's see if that's
treifa meat.
In other words, I have this food and just one is nevela, and I don't know where. Well, treifa are nevela. I'm calling it nevela here, but it could be in one of them. And I know that I took it from this. Oh, maybe I'm a little bit confused. But so what is the case here?
The case is that you have instead of having one store, which you instead of the issue being a store, it's the issue is the piece of meat. You know, a non-kosher piece of meat exists in one of the stores, but you don't know which store has it.
Right. That's what I was trying to draw over here. That I don't know if it's kosher, if it's nevela or kosher, nevela kosher. But I know that I went to this store. In other words, I definitely know that I went to this store, because otherwise it would be a double suffix. Like, I don't even know which store I went to. Then why do I care? What do I care if I I don't know which store it is. What do I care if I do or don't know where the treifa is? It must be that I know where I did go, but I just don't know which store had the treifa. So that's asur. No, that's asur.
According to the Rosh. No, according to everyone, according to the Shach. That's his first few lines.
Yeah. All right, so let's wait. Let me just hold on a second. I want to check something.
But only as a gzera, right?
Only as a gezerah, because
It's
if it was, well, he says he's talking actually a slightly different case. I was a little bit troubled by this picture because it really is a case. It's not really exactly this case. It's really a case where it's poresh, lo lefanenu, where I didn't go anywhere. It just I find it on the street, and then we don't know which store had the treifa. I don't even know why that's so. So the point is, then it's like kavua. It's not really kavua because there's no kaviyut, because every store has a question about it. So if I find it on the street, it's not kavua at all. So it's kavua de Rabbanan. Because we're worried that, well, what does he say? We're worried that, what are we worried? That, right, that when, which would mean what? That when you know it's in a store, when you know it's in one of the treif stores, you'll still go. What is exactly kach mina kavua?
I took that to mean, just because later says that something like you'll think then the kavua case is mutar, right? That you'll say, oh, well, if I have a place where there's 9 kosher stores in one treif store.
No, you remember it's relating to that Gemara. There's a Gemara that says that if you have like these animals that are all mixed up and they're stuck in one place, so you could theoretically make them all run out and then grab one as they come, and then that would be mutter midorite. That would no longer be kavua because they're all running out. So you can take them then. And then on that, the Gemara says, we don't let you shake them up like that because we're worried that you'll take one without shaking them up. So I don't know how exactly that would apply in this case. How would you have a case of stores where you take from the kavua? I don't know, but maybe it's just a similar circumstance in some way, because it's not really kavua, because it's each one, I don't know where it is. In other words, we're afraid that you'll do this, maybe. We're afraid that you'll come and just take one. So even if you find it on the street, we're saying it's usher because we're afraid you're going to go and do this and take one when you don't know. And that would be, well, it's not really kavua. See, that's the problem. This is not kavua. This is not really kavua, where I don't know if it's treifa or kosher in every single store. I don't know where the treifa is. I don't know if that's called kavua. You see what I mean? It's not called kavua because in each store it's a suffix. It's not like I know. It's kavua means it's in its place and we know that it's treif, or we know that it's kosher. All right, let's go on. Let's go on. So, Yavni, why don't you read Daled?
רוב חנויות מוכרות בשר שחוטה ומיעוט מוכרות בשר נבלה. לקח מאחת מהן, ואינו יודע מאיזה מהן לקח, ונתערבה באחרות, ואינה ניכרת, בטלה ברוב משום ספק ספקה. So if you have the case where you have the majority of the stores are selling kosher meat and one is selling, and the minority is selling treif meat, and you took with one of them and you don't remember where it was. Up until now, it's the previous case where we say
Right, it's still this case,
kavua.
exactly.
But in this case, now whatever you bought now gets mixed up with other pieces of meat, and it can't be recognized. Then it's batel berov because of sfek sfeka. V'yesh osrin.
Wait, now I have Gimel here. Let's look at Kaf Gimel for a second.
Oh, sure. But
And he says in the Shach. So he says, because he's going on the words Batela Barov, that it's Batel Barov. Again, what's the case? You have this one that's Usser here. I'm pointing to my picture. You have this one that's Usser here, and then what? It mixed up with other ones.
Right.
So this is Usser Deraita, really, right?
Yeah, and that's what I think that I think it was the Taz who like doesn't understand, or maybe it was the Shach who doesn't who can't see why the Mechaber would say this.
Well, this is Usser Deraita, and if it mixes in Rov, it's Batel Rov, right? Because it's dry and dry, presumably.
No.
Maybe
Right.
It makes sense. So let's see.
Yeah.
Batel Rov. So look at Kaf Gimel. Tzarich Iyun.
Should I keep reading?
Yeah.
בטלה ברוב צריך עיון, דלא יהא אלא תערובות המחבר ספירה לי, דלא יהא אלא תערובות המחבר ספירה לי בסימן ח', בסעיף ח', דלא שרי אלא בשלושה תערובות. והרשב"א, so this is confusing because in Seif Chet, it seems like you need three steps of mixing.
Right. It says in Seif Chet, it says you need to do one pot and then another pot and then a third pot and then it's mutter. So how come here he says it falls into one pot and it's mutter?
Right. והרשב"א לטעמי אזיל דספירה לי דשרי בשתי תערובות.
So this is a machloket. See, the Rashba holds you need 2, and the Rambam holds you need 3.
And it seems like in the other case that the
so it seems like in the other case, it seems like in Chet he's poskening like the Rambam that you need 3, and it seems like here he's poskening like the Rashba that you need 2. Right. 2 suffix. You know, it was a suffix. First, it was here the suffix that kind of that you took from the kavua, and now it fell. Okay. צריך לומר.
וצריך לומר דספירה למחבר דכיוון דקבוע חידוש הוא גרע מתערובות וכל שנתערב אחר כך אז לינן בתר רוב ושרי. And so we have to say that the Mechaber reasoned that because kavua is a chidush, then it's
so because it's a chidush, it's sort of more lenient. It's more lenient because it's just like we would never have thought to usher this thing in the first place. This piece because the stuff it's like, well, because it's like go after Rove, go after the Rove kosher shops. And we would have matured this first case that I'm pointing to, except for the Torah telling us not to. So really, we have every reason to matter it. So then, if it gets mixed into another thing, so that's the Torah already wasn't talking about that. The Torah wasn't talking about a case where it just says in this case it's us. That's all it says. So that's the only case we're not going to extend it to any other cases.
Rav Nachum, just to clarify, right? If I'm not looking at it right, but Seif Chet, I believe that's not a case of kavua. It's a case of something that's not batel barov, like chaticha realit kabed, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Devar chashuv. Right. That's exactly the distinction. That's exactly the point. In other words, that here it's by in other words, in a sense they're similar because they're both things. The devar chashuv is something that's not batel. And this is also something that's not batel. It should be, we go after the rov, and it should be batel. We only have one status nevela. So they're both in that sense similar. In the devar chashuv, it's the rabbanan that is not batel. And sort of paradoxically, where it's the rabbanan that it's not batel, we need 3 stages to matter it. But here, where it's the right to not batel, we only need 1. And he's explaining why, because, like I said, that it's a chiddush, that you would have mattered this right away if the Torah hadn't said anything. But once the rabbis got involved, who knows? You know, the rabbis, once they got involved and says that the Devar Chashuv is usher, so, well, we're going to learn Sifchet, but until we get there, I'll just say that the Devar Chashuv, they made it like it's Doraita. In other words, they made that Terovit that the Devar Chashuv is in, that every single piece that's there is also Doraita. That was their Gezerah. And therefore, you're going to need 2 more levels, says the Rambam. Or, well, we'll see. Okay. So, yeah, is that the question on that? Okay. So, that's enough of that shach. But there's another shach. Betela berov, kaf dalid, mishum sfeik sfeika. Now, that's also weird. Why does he say mishum sfeik sfeika? Let him just say mishum bittul barov. In other words, it's bittul barov. Why is it? It's bittul barov because of sfeik sfeika. It's very strange. It's like, you know, you should have just said it's bittul barov because it's chiddushu. So read kaf dalid.
ספק בשעה שאוכל החתיכה, שמא לא זוהי שבאה מהקבוע. So that's the second one that it got mixed up in the other ones. ואם תרצה לומר, זוהי שמא של...
And if you're going to say that, no, you're eating the one that was from the Tarov. In other words, he had this piece here, right? And this piece fell into the pot. Now,
Right.
when it's in the other pot, which is imaginarily drawn over here, there's a lot of kosher ones and one from here. So so first of all, Shema, I'm not eating it at all. Maybe I'm eating at this moment,
Right.
just the other ones that are in the pot. And even if I'm eating the one that did come here, well, it's not really usher. It's only, well, we're going to see. What is he going to say?
Right. Shema shel heter hi. Like maybe it came from the store that was selling the heter.
Right, from the rove.
Right. ואם תרצה לומר זוהי, שמא של היתר היא, ולפי זה אסור לאכול כולן בבת אחת, דליקה אלא חדה ספיקה ופשוטו. In which case we say that you can't eat them all at once because then you only have one safek, which is the original safek that we said was not good because of kavua.
Right. Now, not sure everybody agrees with this shach because like I said, why would you need this safek? Why do you need safek at all? Just say it's after rov. You didn't really answer my question.
Isn't it that, like, we already established that rov doesn't work here because of kavua, right? Or because of whatever the rabbis say. Therefore, in order to reapply the rule of rov, you need to have sfeik. So it is causal in that way, meaning sfeik pushes us back into the category of rov. But if you just said rov, you might say that doesn't make sense because we just established that rov doesn't work in this case.
Well, what's the reason that rov doesn't work for the second mixing?
Yeah, I understand exactly. I understand why rov doesn't work in the first case. Why in the second case? In this case, rov doesn't work. But now, the way I explained chidushu, it means that that's the only thing the Torah prohibited. Once it drops to another pot, who knows? Why shouldn't, if it drops to a pot where there was rov against it, worst case it's usher, but one in a majority is batal.
Why are we saying it's batal? You said it's, or you were saying that it's yavesh beyavesh?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we're talking about. We by the way, right? We're learning the Siman right after we learned the Siman of Yavesh B'Yavesh.
Right.
We're talking about Yavesh B'Yavesh. That's otherwise
Right.
we would have a discussion about Tom. You know, we're never discussing Tom
right.
anywhere here.
Right.
Well, have we discussed fake Tom Esor up till now at all?
Have we discussed what?
The case of a fake Tom Esor?
Safek Tom Isur.
Yeah, in other words, there was like this case where let's pretend, I get, I take it from a store, I can't remember which store it was from, and then I drop it in my soup, and then I take it out because I see it, but then there's the flavors in the soup now.
Right. So we didn't discuss that. Right. We didn't discuss that.
Yeah.
But presumably you would need 60 in that case.
I think so. Yeah. But
and this case you would need 62 if it fell into a pot that was cooking. It fell into like a serving tray.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. I mean, all of this becomes really only practical. Where is this practical? Any of these halachot in a beit hashchita, where you have an animal, you try to keep you're checking the lungs of all the animals, and you're trying to keep track of which one, and somehow you got mixed up, and you found that there was one treif lung, and you can't figure out which one the animal that lung came from is. That's these kinds of cases aren't going to really come up anywhere except that, I think. So because we're not talking, like you said, we're not talking about falling into a cooking pot. All right, let's go on.
In the to the Rama.
Yeah, to the Rama.
ויש אוסרין בכהגבנה משום דכל מקום דאיסור במקומו הווה כמחצה על מחצה, והואיל וספק הראשון אסור מן התורה, ואין כאן עוד ספקה להיתר, רק תערובות לא מקרי ספק ספקה, והכי נהוג.
So this actually relates to something I was mentioning to Joel before class. There's famous Gemaras, or there's Gemaras that are relevant to this, which is there's two kinds of things. There's Sfek Tarovet, Safek Tarovet, and Safek Begufo. Did anybody see a Gemara about Safek Begufo? That one we probably didn't see. I didn't give it because I didn't give it out. The Safek Begufo, the classic case, is a Gemara in Ketubah, where you have a woman who got married, and the husband says Petach Patuach Matzati. He says she's not a virgin, and therefore she must have committed adultery. She must have been with another man after the erusin, before the wedding, and therefore she's forbidden to me. And the rabbi said no, because we have two suffix. First of all, suffix, maybe she had relations with somebody before the erusin, in which case she's perfectly permitted to you. And even if you say it was after the erusin, maybe it was the Baal himself who did it. So therefore, we have two suffix in her goof, in one entity. Nothing to do with tarovet. And so therefore they say it's mutter. But what's the case of, there's another case of safek tarovet. What's the case of safek tarovet? Two safek sfeka, I'm saying, in a tarovet. So here in Zvachim. You guys see my screen? So here in Zvachim, Amar Rav, Taba'at Shalabot Zara, Shrit Arva B'Meya Taba'ot. So it mixed up with 100 other rings. V'nafal achat mehen liyam. And now one of them fell into the sea. Hutra kula. The Amrinan because we'll say, so they'll all become mutter. Why? We say, Hakta nafal hainu iser. We say the one that fell was the iser. So here's exactly a little bit different, but basically we're saying it's fake. You could say we're saying it's fake here, because we have two tarovas. First of all, it fell into the Meya Tabaot. So any particular ring that I take out might be the Isser one or not. So that's one suffix. And now it fell. Now I'll say, so even, in other words, there's another suffix in the Tarova. Maybe there is no Isser here at all. There's either the Isser here is here, in which case maybe the one that I'm taking isn't that Isser. And furthermore, maybe the Isser isn't even here. Maybe it fell into the sea. So it's like two ways of saying two statistical chances that it's not here. Of course, there's another issue going on here, which is here not of hana'ah, and one of them going to the sea means that you lost one of them, so you don't get hana'ah now from it. So that's also going on here. That's Amar Rav. What is it? Rav Damar Rabbi Eliezer. Ditnan Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Im karav harosh elachad mehen yikravu kol haroshan. V'had Amar Rabbi Eliezer lo hitiru Rabbi Eliezer ela shnayim aval echad lo. Okay, this is a different point. Here again we have chaviot. There's also a case of kosot. I think that's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, but there's a case of cups of Avodah Zarah. But here also chaviot truma shnitarvu b'meya chaviot v'nafal achat mihen liyam hamel. Same thing. Hutra kulan. Hakta nafal isur nafal. So that's kind of like a tarovet. Maybe that's not the best example, but that's an example. Just looking at. That's an example of a suffix in a tarovet. Now the question is like this: what if you have a suffix that's part of each? In other words, it's part in the goof and part in tarovet. So what was that case? That was the case of the treifa, right? Right, Joel? That's what we said. Yeah, the treifa. So what's the case of the treifa? So you have, Joel, you want to tell us what the case of the treifa is?
So I'll see if I can reconstruct without looking at the seif. It's a fake treifa, right? So like maybe like an animal that got injured, but you don't know if it actually caused a treifa to it or something like that. And then it gets mixed up in, a tarovet.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it. I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you take one, and so you can say, right? It's
say this one might not be the Isser, the one that's a suffix Isser, and even if it is the suffix Isser, it's only a suffix. So it's fake. So the question is, do we say that? Because it's kind of like kilayim. It's like two different kinds of suffix. One suffix is in the goof, and one suffix is in the tarovet. So now if you read that again in the Ramah, you'll see that's what he's saying. Read the Ramah again. V'yesh omrim.
ויש אוסרין בקהי גאוונה משום דכל מקום דאיסור במקומו הווה כמחצה על מחצה, והואיל וספק הראשון אסור מן התורה, אין כאן עוד ספקה להתיר רק תערובות.
רק tarovet. You see, he's saying it's not a suffix, it's a tarovet. And as he wants two suffix beguf.
אין כאן עוד ספקות, רק תערובות, לא מקרה ספקה,
So wait, let's think, what is he saying again? Let's go that slowly. What did he mean by makom? Mishum de kol makom, the iser mimakomo, havik mechsa mechsa.
במקומו is saying that, yeah.
What's our case again?
במקומו, that's like his way of saying kavua, right? במקומו.
Right.
So he's saying the first.
In other words, he's saying basically
the
what
first
he's saying
ambiguity.
Is like this. The first ambiguity is totally usher. It's not called a suffix.
Right.
It's still called kavua, basically.
Right.
came from a kavua, it mixed into something, and now that whole thing is kavua. The kol makom, the isser b'makomo, it's in its makom, havik meksa al meksa. That tarovet is meksa al meksa, and that's not called a suffix, really. That's called asur midiraita, meksa al meksa.
Right. And so that's the what the Mechaber seems to be calling the suffix rishon, and that's
Right.
asur min Torah.
Which sounds like he's going like the Rambam. Like, in other words, that the mixture, the minute the kavua comes into the mixture, that whole mixture is asur. And it's mechsa al mechsa, and it's asur midiraita.
Yeah.
So
No, it's not a mixture. The whole that one that we don't know where it came from, that has an ambiguity attached to it. It's just asur min Doraita.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Fine. That one is not a suffix asur. It's a vaday asur, and
Right.
therefore, when it falls into a mixture, all we have is a mixture here. So that's not enough. Maybe it's not exactly related to what I said, but maybe it is. I'm not sure. Okay.
Can I ask a question about the sources you brought
Yeah.
earlier? It seemed to be that you can get a suffix, like in the case of the ring that fell, you can get a suffix even if it's not like 50-50 chance, right? Like you can get a suffix just from one of them falling in, then it's a suffix, whether like, even if it's only
Right.
1 in 10 chance that it was the Avodah Zarah ring, then it's still, right?
Right. In other
Suffix.
words,
And when
still a
earlier when we
suffix.
were,
Yeah,
right,
we
it's
don't.
still a
When we
suffix.
asked about the girl, we don't know what
Right.
the chances are. We're not
Right.
discussing the statistical likelihood. How
Right.
much.
We don't care about, as long as there's a chance, then there's some suffix. So my question is, earlier when we were looking at kavua and the different sources on kavua, one of them was saying like you can have a kavua lekula. How? By saying like you threw the rock, and because it was half and half, because it's kemechza al mechza, now we're going to consider it a suffix. But why did we need to say it was kemechza al mechza? It was a suffix anyway, even if it was only 1 in 10. Does my question make sense?
Wait, what's the case? I don't remember what you're talking about exactly.
What was the case when we said that mechza al mechza can be lakula? I think it was where you throw the stone and there's Jews and non-Jews.
Yeah.
And even if there's only one non-Jew, we say it's kemechza al mechza dame, and therefore it's a suffix.
Yeah,
But
well,
why
that's
do
a
we need
proof.
that?
That's a great support for what we're saying. No, we're saying we view the whole group,
Right.
Doraita, as well.
But it's saying that davka because it's kavua,
as not
like,
Jews, as not necessarily Jews.
Right, but why does it say anything about kavua then? That's my question. Because with the ring case, you could say the same thing. You're also
That is
treating it as a
kavua. What do you mean?
suffix, but it's
That is
not
kavua.
kavua. The ring case?
No, but by the mixture of people, that's kavua.
Right, it is kavua, but it's not relevant that it's kavua. The kavua doesn't give us the kula.
Sure it does, because we have 9 Jews.
Right.
So if we wouldn't have kavua, we would say it's majority Jews. You killed a Jew, you're chayav.
No, but we would still say it's a suffix, right? Isn't the only, we use that as a suffix.
We would say holchim acharov.
But then why don't we say holchim acharov in the case of the rings? That one of them went to the sea.
Well, the truth is there, it's called the parish miruba parish. Well, actually, no. Well, that's the opposite.
No.
We don't say that.
Right.
Right.
We still consider it a suffix. That's my, yeah, exactly.
Why don't we say called the parish miruba parish? Well,
Right, and therefore we assume that it was a non-avodah zarah ring that fell in, that got lost.
Right. We assume it was an avodah zarah ring that got lost. We assume
We assume that it might have been.
That it might have been.
Yeah.
Because you're right. It's a good question. You're saying, why don't we say go after the majority?
Right.
Right. We don't seem to see what's kavua about that case at all.
Yeah. I mean, unless, right. They didn't, yeah. I wouldn't assume that they were kavua rings. I wouldn't. Okay.
I'm not sure. You're right. It's a good question. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay.
Somebody else have an answer? No. Okay, so let's go on. We did. All right, so let's go to hay. Maybe is Asher there?
I think he disappeared.
He just disappeared. He was there a while ago. So, Josh, why don't you read hay?
I'll try. מי שלקח בשר מהמקולין, פירוש בית המטבחיים, ואפילו חתיכה הראויה להתכבד, ונמצאת טרפה במקולין, ולא נודעו חתיכות טרפה, ואינו יודע מאיזו לקח, כל מה שלקחו מהמקולין קודם שנמצאת הטרפה מותר, שלא נפל ספק קבוע אלא לאחר שפירש, וכיוון שהרוב כשר מותר, אבל לקח מכאן ואילך אסור, ואפילו חתיכה שאינה ראויה להתכבד, שאין הכל בקין בזה, ויטו בין ראויה להתכבד לשאינה ראויה.
So,
So,
give it a try.
another spectacular case.
Wait, translate it.
Okay, so if you take some meat from the butcher, even if it's a חתיכה ראויה להתכבד, and then they find the treifa in the butcher's
Yeah,
shop.
that right. Okay.
But they don't know which one it is. They don't know which one is the treifa. And you don't know which one you took.
In other words, the guy is selling in the store meat, and he bought from 6 different cows, and he's got it all cut up in his refrigerator. And one of the cows turned out to be a treifa. So he's got in his store meat that's treifa, not treifa. And he doesn't know which is which. But you already took from the store. That's what I drew over here. The person took from this store. He took kosher. At the time he took, this line means time changed. At the time he took, he thought everything was kosher. And then later, it turns out that there's nevela and kosher in the store. And he doesn't know. I mean, this line I have trouble with. What is Eino Yodea Me'ezeh Lekach? No, he couldn't know which he took because I guess you have to read it like this. And because the owner of the store doesn't know, he doesn't know either. In other words, it's unknowable, right? The owner of the store, it says already, lo nodu chatichot treifa ve'eno yodea me'ezeh lekach. I think because they're lo nodu, or maybe lo nodu means he didn't know previously when he took. But either way, it's a little bit repetitive, the language is all I'm bothered by. But the point is, he took at a time when there was no knowledge of whether what he took is treifa or not. And now there's no.
And there wasn't even knowledge that there was, like, it was assumed that there was no treifa. Right?
It was assumed it was assumed there was no treifa. And now we have a situation where the whole shop is full of stuff that we don't even know what it is. Some of it's treifa and some of it's not treifa. So he says like this: Kol ma shelakach me'hamakol kodem shenimsa treifa. Anything that he took before this discovery is mutter, which is kind of weird because, like, could be there was somebody it was discovered and he just anyway finished his shopping and went out. So he'll be usser, and for me it'll be mutter. And we put from the same place, the same meat, and it's kind of a weird din. I can have the exact same label on my meat as you have on your meat, and mine will be kosher and yours will be treif. Why? Shelo nafal hasafek b'kavua el ha'achar shepiresh.
It doesn't become kavua. until this
No.
knowledge.
Well, I mean, but kavua means in the shop. It didn't be, the suffix didn't fall to the shop until after I already took things out. The kevan sheharov kasher mutter. And since most of it is mutter, is kosher, so therefore what I took is mutter. Now, it's not because there was no, it's like two things going on here. If I found out afterward that everything was nevela, or that most of the things were nevela, then it would be usher. It's only because I found out that a mute of the things were nevela. It's like a combination of rove and the fact that the knowledge happened after.
I think you can say it a little differently, meaning, yeah, it's a little weird that what I bought is kosher, but what you bought is not kosher. But that's just because of the way that piresh and kavua work, right? It's not necessarily based in reality, but we've already said that once the suffix happens, once it's piresh, then you're fine. So it doesn't matter that even if it's like a split second different, that's just the way the principles work.
Oh, that, yeah, I agree with you. But what about my second point? Why is it that I also require rove? Like, what's the rove doing here? I need two things.
Yeah. What's the, oh, yeah, sorry.
Why wouldn't you need the rove?
Why don't I just simply say at the time that I took, everything was Behezkat kosher. So I took it Behezkat kosher. He's saying, what? Because you're saying because the Hezkat gets ruined. The Hezkat gets ruined. You know, once I find out that there's majority nevela here, then, well, if the Hezkat got ruined, then why don't I say, I mean, what if it was all nevela? I'm sorry, if it was all nevela, then it would be usher, right? If it was a small amount of nevela, then it's mutter. But if it's a small amount of nevela, then how can I call this kavua and forbid the other guy who comes afterward? Why can't he just say?
Yeah, what is the what is making a kavua in this case? I'm not clear on that.
You're saying,
well, isn't this the shach that we read? Meaning the shach, we read the shach earlier where he said that all this, the leniencies about piresh only applies when you're dealing with a store. But as soon as you know that there's some sort of meat that is a treifa, then the normal laws of piresh don't apply. That's why here it doesn't matter that it's as a presumption of permission, because we're dealing with a treifa piece. It's the earlier shach we read. 17. Design.
Well, I think that it has to be a piece of shit that's realit kabed for it to be really asur, right? In this case.
It has to be, yeah, it has to be ruilit. Well, that's probably true. Probably almost everything we're talking about is ruilit chabed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a gezerah at the end of the seif that says for everything, but really it's like, you know, mikar hadin. It sounds like only realit kabed, so it's not batel barov in the store. Right. But
right. But no, it is batel. We're worried about rov.
In which case, yeah. In which case, why does it matter that it not be rov?
I think that what's going on here is like this. This is what's going on here. I'll tell you what I think is going on here. What's going on here is that if there's I'm looking at this picture again. If there's one little nevela, I should really write. I should have written 2 C's or 3 C's over here just to remember that there's several kosher and one nevela. So that case of several kosher and a nevela is essentially like the goyim and the Jews mixed together, or the treifa sheep mixed together with the non-treifa sheep that are all running around. And technically, and maybe this is, and what I'm proposing, or what I'm thinking in my mind, is that this is really kavua de Rabbanan. It's not really kavua. Because kavua would mean that they're actually, each one is known in its place. And so it's only kavua de Rabbanan, maybe. And in such a case, the gezerah of kavua de Rabbanan didn't apply yet before I know. In other words, if I took it before I knew, because what's the gezerah? The gezerah is shema yikach. Is we're worried that people will go and take from the store, but that chashash didn't exist before there was a knowledge of there being treifa there. In other words, people were allowed to go to the store. We encouraged them to go to the store. We didn't know there was any problem. But once there's a knowledge of there being a treifa, really it is batel. But we have a gezerah that says it's not batel because we're worried that they'll go and take.
That's pretty much the Taz and Dalit to some extent, right? He's a little different, but
Yeah, well, I have Taz circled that Dalit. So let's read that Dalit. Here, Josh, why don't you read that Dalit?
אבל לכך מתקן ואילך אסור. פירוש, אפילו אם פירש שלא בפנינו, שבזה מותר בקבוע דאורייתא ב9 חנויות. מכל מקום, כאן אסור, גזירה שמא ייקח מן הקבוע עצמה.
Right, so he's throwing in the word, he's throwing in the word gezerah, right?
Yeah.
I just see that. מכל מקום אסור גזירה שמא ייקח מן הקבוע עצמו. מה שאין כן בקבוע דאורייתא
שהאיסור ניכר במקומו לאו ברשיעי
עסקינן. We're not talking about, we're not dealing with evil people. In other words, like this, if there was 6, we're not going to worry that somebody's going to take from the treifa store. That we don't go there on. But when you have a store that has majority kosher and one treif, we're worried people will say, well, anything that came out will be mutter. So why can't I just go and take, there's majority, I'll just go after the rove. I'll take food from this store and I'll be at tzaddik. I'm not a Russia. I'm going after the majority. We always go after the majority. So but we don't want them to do that because, well, why? You didn't say why, but I continue reading.
לא ברשיעי עסקינן שייקח במזיד מן האיסור הברור, ומטעם זה נמי מותר כל שלקח קודם שנולד הספק בקבוע דרבנן, אפילו פירש בפנינו, דהה עדיין כולו היתר, ולא גזרינן בלקח בשעת היתר, עד שיקח אחר האיסור.
In other words, we're not going to make a gezerah that maybe you'll take it when it's mutter. So we're not going to prohibit that food now, because when you took it, basically it was mutter. We're only going to make a gezerah that if we let you take things now, that really would be permitted to take things from the store. But if you let you take them now, then maybe they'll take also from some other kind of kavua. I don't have an exact image of what it would be, but some other kind of kavua that would be a kavua deraita. So in other words, basically what I'm saying is like what it comes out is like what I was saying, that really the two guys that come, one before and one after, we said one is asur and one is mutter, it's all derabanan. Really midoraita, it's all mutter. Even the guy who came after that was known the stuff, the treifa. But we just are goes there. Because because we're worried that he will. I mean, the classic case I can explain. The classic case is you've got all these sheep, and if you met them moving and something comes out, then and they all come out, then you can have them all, or you can have all but one. But we don't let you do that. We don't let you move the sheep because we're worried maybe you'll just say, well, I won't bother moving the sheep. I'll just take them. Because you won't understand the difference. So therefore, we don't let you have any of the sheep. That's the case of kavua. In other words, even though they're moving, even though you shook them up, you still can't have them. Because we consider that as though it's kavua. And that's actually, if you think about it, that is the concept of chashuv, like we're going to say, like we said last week. In other words, chashuv is based like the Chachmas Adam said, because what do we say that animals are aser or chashuv? They're not batel. Obviously, it's where they're not kavua, because if they're kavua, then they'd be aser against kavua. So it must be that we're treating them like kavua, even though they're moving around. So that's kavua de Rabbanan. Let's just finish the sif here. Yeah, by the way, the Taz in Hay says, Loga, and by me it's the first wide line. The logas ru ela bira'ui litchabed. Uba'en ru'ui litchabed, shapir batel berov. V'dino kamo shenitarev b'bayit. Shenitarev b'bayit. In other words, in your own house, things that got mixed up and you don't know, then we wouldn't say this. This is a special din in like where you're taking it out from some other place. But in your own house, we wouldn't say this. And it's only a din, and also we only say it because it's Rui Litchabet. All right, but Josh, let's finish Hay and then we'll take a break. Where were we? Kol ma shelachach min hamakolin kodem shematzah treifa mutar. Shalom aval savek b'kavua el la'achar shapirish. B'kevan sha'arov kasher mutar. Aval, so read from Aval.
אבל ייקח מכאן ואילך אסור, ואפילו חתיכה שאינה ראויה להתכבד. So, like after there's this knowledge, it's forbidden to take anything, even a חתיכה שאינה ראויה להתכבד.
Which he has to now explain, why would that be asur?
שאין הכל בקיאים בזה, ואיתור בין ראויה להתכבד לשאינה ראויה להתכבד. There is a hava mina that שאינה ראויה להתכבד might be batel, but we don't. It's xera.
In other words, kavua de Rabbanan only applies to big pieces, but we're going to apply it to littler pieces because people might make a mistake. By the way, this goes against the statement that I said to you once a couple of weeks ago that maybe scraps are anything that's not a rui litchabed, because you see here that eina kol baki'in. People can tell the difference between scraps and steaks. So it must be that we're talking about big steaks and little steaks, and that a little steak is not rui litchabed. In other words, it's not. We're really talking about, minor pieces and major pieces.
Well, they're minor pieces, but they're not a nothing.
Exactly, they're not scraps. My point is, they're not scraps.
Right.
I think this proves that they're not scraps, because we wouldn't say that people are not baki'in in telling what's the difference between a scrap and a steak. So if they're saying we're not baki'in, it must be that the things are pretty close to each other, and therefore rui litchabed means that it's a really nice steak. And if it's not such a nice steak, then it's not rui litchabed. But scraps is not. We're not talking about. All right, let's take a break for 5 minutes. Okay, so we're back to Sif Vav. Here, no, why don't you read Sif Vav?
Sure. Ba'alei chayim u'shar devarim hachashuvim shemitarvu b'heter she'einam b'telim afilu be'elef. So animals or any other important entity that were mixed in heter, they're not batel even in 1,000, so they're never batel. Afilu im piresh echad min harov. Even if you remove one of them from the majority. Achar shenoda hatarva asor. So even if you remove one from the majority after the forbidden mixture became known, it's still forbidden. Behu shehifrishu b'mikaven. But that's only when you do it intentionally. About im piresh b'meila. Sorry, but if the animal or the dvar chashuv gets separated by itself automatically, willy-nilly, as I believe the Rav said, then it's mutar, sharai.
So wait, so there's like 2 conditions to make it asur, right? If If there are two ways to be heter, let's say two ways that you can be heter. If it was if the Torah was not known and you pulled one out, and then you found out that there was well, that kind of is a weird case, right? Then the one I guess you took out would be kosher still. Or would the whole thing be kosher?
Wouldn't just the one that you pulled out be kosher? You say the one I pull out is kosher, the ones remaining, it's still in the one name.
Well, there could be a reason to think that. Okay, fine.
Well, no, because once it's noda, right, then the tarova itself becomes a source. So you had to have pulled one out beforehand, or some number out beforehand, right? So.
Right. So you pulled something out beforehand, and then that one. Okay, let's say that one will become asur. Shefrish b'mit kaven. So, but if it came out willy nilly, as you say, then even after it's noda, it'll be mutter. And this is exactly what we were talking about before. The the gezerah, but you can't create in other words, kavua de rabbanan. Something came out. If you did intentionally, it's asur. But if it came by itself or before it was known, then it would be mutter. So let's look at the Shach Lamed Gimel. And you can skip a little bit in the beginning. Vatam, he writes. This is talking about the kodem. What does it matter? Noda tarovet.
Vatam katava rosh b'tshuva zehad asor piresh mimela hu mishum shema yikach biyadai min hakavua. V'hach gezerah lo ashichan ela hecha shekvar omnim b'chazkat isor. Aval kodem shenolad hasafek lo shayach lemigzar midei shekulan b'chazkat heter hen omdim.
Okay, so go back. Wait, it's a little bit confusing. Go back. The hada asur pirish memela. Why does he put the word memela? I thought we just said that memela is mutter.
I think is that a different case than what we're dealing with here. We're not dealing necessarily with Balei Chayim anymore.
Well, I think that because he's bringing an opinion. There is an opinion that thinks that Piresh Memela is also asur, right? That's the beginning of the shach there.
So all right, he's saying I shouldn't have skipped. So Aval Kodem Shenoda Tarovet. Let's read the whole thing. Aval Kodem Shenoda Tarovet. Before you discovered that there's an Isser thing here, Mutter Afilu Amanda Amar Pirish Memela Asur. Even according to the opinion who holds that it's even Asur when it comes out by itself. Ken Kasav Arosh. Vatur. V'kein Eskim Ar Shal. Peragidanash Siman Kaf Alf. V'darkei Moshe, v'achronim, v'delo k'harashba u'beit Yosef, v'atam. So wait, so we're explaining the tam for what? Aval kodem shenod. I'm reading from the beginning again. Aval kodem shenod ha'tarovet mutar afilu. In other words, everybody agrees that if you don't, that even if you held that it's memela asur. So you're right, Joel. In other words, we're explaining according to the opinion that says Mamela is Asur, which we're not holding, but according to that opinion, we would even allow it here because that Gezerah only apply. That Gezerah Shema Yikach Mina Biadayim Mina Kavua is only where it's where there's an Isser already. It's not Shaykh if there's no Isser yet started. Okay, but in the end, Mamela is going to be mutter. Sounds like it. But look at Lamed Vav. Look at Lamed Vav in the Shach. You know, read Lamed Vav. That's on Shari. says Harosh v'harbe poskim.
Rabbi Nachum, would you ask to read? I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry. Share v'harosh v'harbe poskim pasku the piresh memela. So even the Shulchan Aruch rules share, the Rosh and the majority of poskim say that piresh memela is asur. Delo dame l'tishachaniyot, because it's not similar to the 9 stores. The hatam ha'isur kulo, the hatam ha'isur nikar b'fnei aspo. Lo chayshinan shikach mina kadua v'rishie lo askinan. Mashein kan hacha da'akol murav b'yachad. So it's not like the 9 stores. It's because there everything's like forbidden unto itself.
In other words, the 9 stores is mutter. If right, the 9
if it's
stores,
memela,
if it's perish memela, it's mutter. But here, if it's perish memela, it's not going to be mutter. Not like the 9 stores. Why? Because nobody would have said, in other words, perish memela by those stores, because obviously no one's going to go into the treifa store. But here you've got a mixture of animals, and so maybe you'll go and grab one. Because you'll say, hey, the majority is mutter. If one came out, the majority is mutter. So the mixture, you'll view this mixture as a mixture, because it is a mixture. And you'll say, well, why can't I just take one out? And you'll have lost the gezerah. What I'm saying is you'll have lost the gezerah of kavua de rabbanan. Or right. So piresh memela is going to be usher in this case. That's the point. Piresh memela is going to be usher in this case. Why? Because people won't take it so seriously, and they may actually just go and take a sheep.
Are they kavua because they're each in their own pen or something? What is making these sheep kavua? Or are they dead?
Because they're not moving.
They're not moving because they're tied to posts or something. Each tied to their own post, something like that.
Because they're sticking together. I don't know. No, it's not clear exactly. But the Gemara was like you could scare them out, and then they would. Maybe they're in a pen. Maybe they're in a pen. They're somehow grouped.
It would be right to say that they're kavua as a tarovet, essentially, right? That in other words, like they're all sticking. Yeah, like exactly what you're saying. They're stuck together, and so because it is kavua de rabbanan here that we're talking about.
Well, it's complicated. And then, it's kavua. Maybe it is really kavua. It's kavua when the kavua de rabbanan is actually going on the one that comes out. The one that comes out is kavua de rabbanan, even though really he's not kavua anymore. So when they were together, they were really kavua. The point is, when one comes out, he's not kavua de rabbanan. He's not kavua anymore. And the rabbis say, no, he is kavua.
I'm a little confused. I'm still confused. Like, if I have a bunch of, I don't know, oranges, and one of them is ola or something, and they get mixed up in a basket. They're all in that basket, but I wouldn't call that kavua, would I? Even, yeah. I thought kavua had to be something about like being fixed in terms of like where, like, that's why I was thinking that these sheep have to be like each one in their own pen.
We have the case of the rock thrown against the Jews and Gentiles, and we said call kavua there. Did we have a good rationale for calling that group of Jews and Gentiles? Why do we call that kavua?
I don't know.
I mean, that's what the Gemara considers kavua.
Right.
And that's a deraita law, because you're going to be exempt, from onshim, from punishment.
Okay. I need to keep working on my understanding of kavua.
Yeah, we need to think about why that's kavua. Why is that kavua, that they're in their place? Maybe maybe animals and people are just always in their place. They're identifiable. In other words, they're never, each one has a name. Each person, maybe you can get a whole theological thing that they're always in their place. They're always known. They're knowable, as opposed to oranges, which can get really mixed up. All right, it's a good question. So continue. Wait, no, read the end. Read the Ramah.
Sure. V'had asor in frisho b'mikaven hainu shelo piresh rak me'at v'nisharo miksat hayisrim b'mkomam da'az chayshinan shemi yikach min hakavua gam ken aval im nitparshu kulan b'yachad v'lo nisharu b'mkoman uv'shat akiratan pershu ksatan otan pershu az mutarim.
This is a crazy din. This
Right,
is kind
so
of yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, so he makes a distinction. He limits this issue about removing them intentionally, and he says sort of if you remove them all at the same time, then you're good to go. It's just those last two that forbid it. But if you take them one at a time, it's okay.
Because why? Because the rationale is that we have this gezerah that we're worried if we let you shake up the animals, then you'll come and take from the ones that are not shaken up too. But if they're all shaken up, then there's nothing to take from. So then they're all mutter. Or you said except for two. He says that?
Yeah, it's the rak shnaim achronim achzerim.
Right. So in other words, you throw a rock into the middle of the sheep, and they all run in every direction. The last two ones that are there are usser, and everything else is mutter, because we're not going to be gozer in such a case, because everybody, even the last two, left eventually. So there's no kavua anymore. We're only gozer that shema yilkak from the kavua, from what's left state in the original together. But there's nothing together. So then we all mutter, except for those two, because you need to assume that that's where the isser is. Okay, finish that.
V'im nitarva tarnagola trefa.
No, v'rat. Oh, rak shnaim. Right. Sorry. V'im nitarva. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
V'im nitarva tarnagola trefa b'ksherot v'imsa beitza b'nehem beitza muteret apagav the tarnagolim chashavim v'lo mitbadlin gabe beitza azinam bataruba. So he says that if there's a trefa chicken mixed up kosher ones, and then they found an egg, the egg's actually permitted, because even though the chickens are chashuvim and can't be batel, that doesn't apply to the egg, and we say batel b'rov.
Right. Which is kind of interesting. The chickens are all forbidden to eat, and yet their eggs that come out of them will be mutter, because, because they're not chashuv. That's what you're saying? Yeah, okay. That's what he says, yeah. Okay. Joel, you want to read Zion?
Yeah, can we look at the Shach and Lamed? Do we have time to look at the Shach and Lamed Chet there?
Yeah.
I didn't look at it inside. I'm just looking at it now, and so maybe I'll start with that if that's okay. This is the Habetza Muteret. The Amrinan called the parish Miruba parish. Below Gazrinan Lagabe Betza Shikach Hatarnagoli Mina Kavua. All right, and that's the Torah Chatat Sham B'Shem Isser V'Heter.
In other words, the Beitza itself is Poresh from the Rov, and the Gezerah doesn't apply. The Gezerah of Shemi Yikach Mina Kavua can't apply really, because how are you going to take the egg from a Kavua? It's in the chicken.
Yeah. Ulfize afilu mandemar de Beitza Chashiv Davar Shebeminyan Share Daha B'Tesha Chanuyot Share B'Piresh Mimela. Afilu achatichai reli kabed ufashutu v'chein muchach beiser v'heter dahasfirle de beitza have devar shmiyan. So even if you think a beitza normally is not, if you had a bunch of eggs mixed up together, that would be, they would not be batel, or one would not be batel berov. In this case, right, it's one egg with a bunch of chickens, and we say that it came from the rov of the chickens essentially.
Right. So that's a very important point. So the words of the language of the Ramah was a little bit misleading, because he says the Tarnagolos are chashuvim v'lo mitbatlim. The gabe beitzas linan bataruba. It sounds like the beitzas are not chashuvim, which is misleading. It's not because they're not chashuvim. It's because they are poresh mimela. And we're not going to be gozer in that case, even though a chicken that would be gozer would come out. We would be gozer, right? The Shach says we are machmir that even memela. By the way, this is another place where the Shulchan Aruch says it's mutter, or the Ramah says memela is mutter, and the shach says no. Most poskim say it's not mutter, if even mamela. But by the egg, that mamela he will be lenient on. Almost a contradiction. Right? But I guess you have to say, like I was saying, that it's not a contradiction because it's not shaykh to be goes there in that case. Because how would you take it from the kavua? How would you get the egg? Really, I want to get to chet. So chet is where some of the fireworks are. So let's
do Zayin first, and then we'll do chet. Is that okay? דבר שאינו בטל מחמת חשיבותו, כגון בעלי חיים, בריאה וחתיכה להתכבד, ודבר שיש לו מתאים, שנתערב באחרים, ונאכל אחד מהם בשוגג. All right, so I have a group of things that are not batel. They're mixed together, and I accidentally eat one of them, right? And he says, ben sha'achlo atzmo b'shogeg, ben sha'achluhu acherim b'shogeg, right? That whether I did it myself or some other people did it, came by and ate them. Okay. O nafal me'atzmo la'yam, binyan shene'evad min olam, or it just on its own falls. One of them gets destroyed completely. Hu true kol ha'acherim, she'anu tovim lomar ha'isur halachlo, right? And everything else is permitted because we say that the one that went, that's the isur. V'dafka she'ochel hanisharot shtayim biyachad. There's and it's only if I eat them 2 by 2, 2 at a time for every other one. We'll see that, or maybe we'll see the idea here is essentially like you combine that with the one that left, and you get batel. The mimanavshach ika chada dehetera. Aval leochlam achad asur, but to eat them one by one, that's forbidden.
No, wait a second. So what is it? V'davka she'ochlam nisharot shtayim biyachad. You have to eat 2 at once. Now, are these hatichot rui litchaber? I hope not, because it'd be hard to eat them 2 at once.
It'd be a lot to eat at once. Yeah.
I don't know what.
You have to cut like both pieces of meat together and put them on the fork. Yeah. So.
Biyachad. Dimemanavshach ich achada de hetera.
Yeah. Because there's one, at least one of them is mutar.
I don't understand it because.
How does that help?
Yeah, one of them is usher. Also,
yeah,
I would rather eat them one by one, and then I could always say the other one is the one that is the isser. But I already said that one of them is the isser, the one that went away. Why is this whole requirement doesn't make much sense? I already said the isser is gone. I'm told it. And now I got to eat it 2 by 2 because I want to make sure that I'm eating an isser. I mean, it's a little bit weird. I marked a couple of things I wanted to see.
Was it the Shach Mem Zayin?
Dafka, that one I didn't. I maybe that's an important one.
Good because I struggle with that one.
I chose Mem. Let's look at Mem first, but I'll read it. It's just a few lines towards the end. Towards the end. Aval.
On Mem, hold on one second. I see Lamed Tet and I see Mem Aleph. Where is Mem?
Mem
there
is
yeah. Lamed Tet is really short.
Yeah, Lamed Tet's really short. There we go. So the end of Mem, you said?
Which starts with Aval fi aniz da'ati.
Let's see if I can find it. Amazing Dayam. Mashma lahedid afilo nochal knasin shogeg atu mezid. How many lines do you think it is?
Well, by me, it's the 3rd wide line.
Okay, maybe that's 1, 2, 3.
Just wait.
How many lines from the bottom though? Because where it gets wide is not consistent.
Yeah, I know.
Well, we could read it all.
Well, now I gotta just go through that. Shabbat Rosh. No, I don't have it yet. You said the Shach, right? In Mem? Yeah.
Yeah, because in Mem he says, what does he say? Wait. He says, V'nochal echad.
I found it.
Echad mehen b'shogeg.
Aval lefi aniyut dati divrei maharil einam muchrachim.
Yes. Yes.
Great. All right. Dinireh dinahida leka lemigzar shiachil b'mezid Mikol makom havadai im nechal mutar. Kol sheken nafal layam. Okay. Those are the words of the Mahari, or is that his fight against the Mahari there?
Just a second, sorry. Aval the nearer the nehida lecha the migzah sheyocha b'mezid mikol makom ha vaday im nocha mutter kol shekain nafal liyam im kain nichush ki sharinan le. We should worry nichush ki sharinan le nochal b'shogeg yapilu b'mezid. Maybe he'll throw one away b'mezid. Why are we allowing this case of he ate it b'shogeg? Maybe he'll do it b'mezid. The kevan de sharia l'didei lechol nichus shema yochal agoy. Maybe he'll let a goy, in other words, or a kelev eat it. So therefore, he says he wants to be against this din. The shach is coming out against this din, that he says no chal echad mehen b'shogeg is mutter, because who's saying that he's shogeg? He's telling us that. Maybe he's lying. Maybe he's not lying. Maybe, it's just a small thing. He gave it to the dog, So now he can eat it.
Well, there's been many shachs that I've mentioned so far that we're not dealing with sinners. We're not dealing with
this is not a
wicked
sinner.
people.
No, but a sinner is a guy who goes into the treifa shop and comes out and says he went into the kosher shop. This is a guy who knows that if he ate it by accident, it would be mutter, the other pieces. So he says, well, I'll just feed it to it. I'll throw one to the Yam HaMelech. If I would have done it by accident, the difference between, you see, like we said before, if it's a mixture, he'll take one. Remember, by the shops, he'll go in and take one. It's a mixture because go after the rove, but he wouldn't go into it. Well, all we said is we're not worried that a person is going to go into a treif shop and tell us he went to a kosher shop. That's called a Russia. It's not called a Russia that you feed one to a goy to a dog and say, well, I got eaten by accident, and it's because you didn't actually eat him, because a normal person doesn't see much difference between that. Either way, one is missing, and it's even better that I gave it to a dog. I didn't even eat it. Anyway, that's I'm not sure if he's paskening, but he's just raising doubt on that din. Look at Mem Hey and Mem Vav, and I guess Mem Zayin.
All right, here we go. Mem Hey shene evad aval nechtach or nitrasek nitpaer dino b'siman kuf aleph seif zayin vayen sham.
And the din there is rak oto shenit tacha muteret. Just the one. If it got cut up or something, then just the one that got cut up is mutter.
Because it's no longer really kabed.
Because it's no longer really kabed.
So,
all right, Mem Vav.
Okay, Mem Vav. Sha'anu Tolim. This is when one of them gets lost or is eaten. We rely on the idea that it was, that's the bad one. Hatam lekol elu mimnesha kavarnit batel minatura berov harashba. Okay, why are we able to be told on that? Because, right, all this stuff about Riyali Kabed and so forth is not batel. That's the Rabbanan. So if they're right, it's mutar.
Right. So we're being able to be told that. Don't get the wrong idea. You can be told that if it is a deraita. Like in the case, well, what about the case of the rings? Well, there it fell into a mixture and it was really batel, and then it fell into the sea. So it's the same thing. All right, Mem Zayin. You wanted to see Mem Zayin.
This is the Miman Nafshach Ikachada de Hetera. All right. Vamrinan midechavre lav di isura lav di sura ihu lav di sura ihu nami lav di sura kachkatav Rashi bezvachim. All right, this is the logic. Before I get to what he gets from this, of why you can say that you need essentially two, right? That it combines when it combines, it's not from the Isura, and that one's also not the Isura, I think is what he's trying to say.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, the way I understood it, I wrote a note for myself here. I don't. This was years ago. I don't know. That essentially it combines somehow. It's like combining with the lost one. So you have at least one of them is mutar, and either the lost one is asur, and they're both mutar, or the lost one's mutar, and and there's an isur in there. But now the isur is batel with the mutar one and the one that's lost, essentially. So, or it's like each one of them is half asur somehow.
Okay, I still don't quite understand it, but yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
something like that. I went back to the Rashi at one point in Zvachim, but umizeh mashmedim nitarvu shtayim sarich lechol arba arba v'chein shlosha sarich lechol shesh shesh de'im lo ken lekla memar demechavre lav de'isura v'chulei. Right, dilma bechad dehave amiut aminan lav de'isura el isura beruva dahainu b'shnayim ita v'duk v'chein mochav mitoch divrei marshal and perkira nasha. So the main thing I took out of this is, right, he's playing with the case here of, well, what if it's, there are multiple Isurim in here. So how many do you need? So you need to double it every time, essentially, is his claim.
Yeah, well, that's why I skipped this route, because I don't understand it.
Good. I was hoping you'd help me, because I wasn't sure I fully got it. So
yeah, I don't know. I have written in my notes, we need an explanation for this.
Oh, good. So I'll have to see if I can find someone who summarizes the shach there.
He says, wait, since one is for sure heter, we say that
Nachum
since
used
this
the term. Nachum used the term happy, sir. What do you mean by that?
happy, sir?
That's what I heard you say a couple minutes ago.
I don't know.
Does that mean it's a doubtfully, sir?
He says that since one is usher, so its friend is. Since one is mutter, so also the other one is mutter. In other words, if you're going to say this one's mutter, then maybe the other. I don't quite understand. I don't understand. I'm reading it as. I admit my lack of understanding.
Because its pair is not an Isur, essentially. It's not an Isur, is like that's what he's claiming here. It's something like that.
I don't know. Let's go on. Let's go on.
Okay, never mind. I got us down that road. Should I do the Haggadah?
Just so you know, in the Siftei dot, like everyone's like there's some confusion. No one agrees with him, so we're in a good company.
Oh, good. Okay, that's all right. Haggah. This is the Ramah. Vafil le'achlam shtayim asur le'adam echad lechol kulam. Vafilu shtei bnei adam shnei bnei adam ein le'ochlam kulam bevat echad. Right. So that he says, even if you're doing 2 by 2, you gotta get a friend to join you for this meal to make sure that you don't eat the Isser. And even 2 people, don't eat them all at once.
So wait a second. You have to have 2 people. Which we just said, asur la'adam echad. Oh, well, that's now it makes sense. No, maybe we just had to read on. If you're giving it to your friend, so now I can say he's eating the Isser, and he can say I'm eating the Isser.
You think the shach is about the 2 people at that point?
I'm just.
Yeah, I could take that.
No, the Mechaber says you have to eat them shtayim.
Right.
And then he says to eat them shtayim. Then the Ramah says if you eat them shtayim, it's actually forbidden for one person because then you're for sure eating the Isser.
Yeah.
So you have to eat it to 2. You have to eat it with 2 people. So then then I have a svara. I'll say he's eating the Isser and he'll say I'm eating the Isser.
Yeah.
Then it makes sense. Vafilu shnei bnei adam ein lo ochlam kulam bebat achat. And that's also true. We shouldn't be like both eating at the same time because then each one wants to say the other, it's already gone. He ate it, but I'm not going to say that you're eating it right now. I want to say you ate it, nothing to do about it. It's too late.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say while you're eating it that you're eating Isser.
So really what we should do if this happens and, Noam and I each take 1 steak. I eat 1 and then he eats 1, right?
Exactly.
Then I eat 1, then he eats 1. Right?
Yes. So now, but look at Mem Tet. Or maybe let's skip that. Let's skip it because I want to get the Chet.
All right.
So keep here. You're on a roll.
All right. Devar she'eno batel machmat chashivuto shenitarev be'acharim. I love this case. V'nafal mi'atarovot hazot echad lishnayim acharim. V'nafal min hashlosha echad lishnayim acharim. Hare elo acharim mutarim sharei echad mutarim. Sharei ha'echad shel tarovot harishona batel berov. V'im nafal echad mi'atarovot harishona le'elef kulam asurim. Lo nomar batel berov elo latir sfeik sfeikan shemipol min hatarovot hashniya lemakom acher eno oser.
All right, so
Okay.
translator, explain.
All right, so we have a case. There is something that's not batel. It's mixed up in others. And something from that tarovot falls to a second, or to two others, right? There's a second tarovot. All right. And
In
something
other
from
words,
that
two
one,
others. Why two others? Because we
it's
need to have
batel
echad betray.
bro. Yeah. So it could also be into 10 others if we want.
Exactly.
And something from that mixture then falls into a third mixture. All right. Then the last mixture is mutar. It could even be the last two mixtures are mutar. It's from his language there. But
well, that's an opinion, by the way. That's Rashi.
Is it Rashi? Okay.
That's what Rashi holds. Not that. Yeah. V'nafal min hashlosha. Wait a second. Min hashlosha echad lishnayim to another shnayim acherim. Hare elu acherim. Well, probably means the what? Well, elu acherim.
It probably means the last mixture.
Normal translation is yes. The third mixture. Hare mutari. Shehare ha'echad shel tarovet harishon batel berov, because the first one was already batel berov. What is it? Shehechad shel tarovet harishon. So in the second pot, it was already batel berov.
Yep. But and if something fell from that first tarovet to elef, right? They'd all be asur, right? Because we don't say that it's batel. Oh, that it's negated in rov. We only say it for the case of sfeika, right? That if it falls from the second mixture to a third mixture, it's no longer oser.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, in other words, it's safek. The first safek is that we got the iser from the first mixture, and the second safek is we got the iser from the second mixture, assuming that it was an iser in that case. So
the big question is, why do we need 3? Why not 2? 2 should be enough, right? Because it fell into the first one. Can I have why we're monitoring this based on sfeika and rov together, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have what's the sfeika?
It's a safek of whether or not the iser fell into the first one. It's a safek whether or not the iser fell into the second one, essentially.
Right. In other words, well, when I'm eating the second one, what will I say? I'll say this piece that I'm eating, well, in this second one, it might not be the iser. It's a tarovet. Yeah. And even if I'll say it like this. I'll say the thing that fell into this pot may not have been the iser. The iser may still be in the original tarovet. And even if it fell in when I'm eating it now, maybe I'm not eating that one. I'm eating a different one, right? Again, if it's in the first mixture and then it fell into the second mixture. So in the second mixture, I can already say sfeika because I can say any particular one that I'm eating, it might not be that the iser fell in at all because I just know that something fell in. And even if it did fall in, maybe I'm not eating it now. So that's sfeika. And I have rov in this pot. So that should be enough.
Yeah, so you either have to claim that everything from the first mixture was asur, right? That's one way to say that that's a problem.
So look at these 2 Rambams here that I have in front of you.
Oh, you have
is it still there?
Yeah, it is. Can you make it a little bit larger, or I can go look at it?
I can make it larger. Here.
Actually, I could probably do it. Here we go. Perfect.
Okay, so first of all, wait, where is it? Yeah. First of all, so first of all, I'll give you Tosfos explains why you need to be the third one. And he says like this, this is my summary. Kidei le'echol hakol tzarich tarovet shlishi. In other words, when we said that you need shlishi, we only meant if you want to eat it all. But if you're going to eat it one by one, then you could eat the second one, actually. Now, look at the Rambam. The Rambam doesn't give an explanation, but he contradicts himself. He says, you want to read, Joel?
Either way, it's I can do it. All right.
You read.
נפל רימון אחד מן התערובת הזאת לשני רימונים אחרים, מרימוני בדן, which are not batel, ונפל מן השלושה רימון אחד לרימונים אחרים, הרי אילו אחרים מותרים, שהרי הרימון של תערובת הראשונה בטל ברוב. ואם נפל מן התערובת הראשונה...
Wait, slow down.
Yeah.
What did we just read?
This is the case that the Shulchan Aruch just brought, right? That he has rimonim, but rimonim that are not batel, right? Because those are the Varshav Minyan, and it falls.
But it says "Arei elu acheri mutarim," which are what is mutar?
It sounds like the last, the shlosha, the third mixture essentially.
Right.
That's the second one, and then there's a third. Yeah.
Right. שהרי הרימונים של התערובת הראשון בטל ברוב, מדאורייתא.
Yeah. ואם נפל מן התערובת הראשונה רימון לאלף כולן אסורים. All right, that fact that if it falls one even to 1,000, right? It's not.
No, because we don't have enough suffix.
Yeah.
How do you have to? Wait. V'lo nomar batel berov. El lahat yosfek sveikan, she'im yipol min hatarovet hashniya l'makom acher eino aser v'ken kol kiyotze b'zeh. So how do you explain that? Why do you need sveika and rov? And why is it that it's not in the second pot already?
I think it's the words kulan asurin right there, right? Because the original, it's not like when
Why are
I
they
have,
all?
Because it makes the entire thing asur, and so every individual becomes asur at that point.
I think what the Rambam is
it's
describing is only 2 steps, unlike what we were looking at in the Shulchan Aruch.
No, it's 3 steps. It's 3 steps.
Nafal rimon echad.
נפל רימון אחד מן התערובת הזאת לשני רימונים אחרים. So now we've got a tarovet already. ונפל מן השלושה רימון אחד לרימונים אחרים. Are you saying that's 2?
I think it's 3.
No, you're right.
It's 3. It's 3.
Right now I get confused. Nafal rimon echad min tarovet, because we started off with a tarovet.
Yeah.
That was the thing. We had a tarovet already. So this is how I'm going to explain it. Im nafal min tarovet arishon le'elef kulan asurim. Why are they all asur? Why isn't it sveka? Because this is already a safek and this is a safek. So you have to say like this: that the Rambam is holding that when the rabbis forbid a mixture with a davar chashuv in it, everything in that mixture is asur ba'oto midah, at the same level, as though it's an issur d'oraita. As though, I mean, it's not, but we're treating it as an issur d'oraita. And
so
therefore,
the
sfeik is not going to help. In other words, no, that's issur d'oraita, but that's not called anything. That's not called a suffix at all. The suffix disappears on the first tarovet. On the first tarovet, there's no suffix. Because that's the gezerah. Because if, and it actually makes a lot of sense, because if they would be leaving it as a suffix, then that would be, then there's no gezerah. Obviously, if you have a mixture with one thing in it that's asur and a lot of things that are mutter, then obviously that's called a suffix, and you can't eat it. What was the meaning of the gezerah that they said it's asur? They're saying that you treat it as though it's not a suffix. You treat it as though it's not a suffix. So that's not a suffix. So then when one falls in, it's a vadai falling in, and therefore kulan asurin. And that's why he says kulan asurin in a two level. And therefore you need the third level, but that second, in other words, the second level is not asur. It's that this is kulan asurin mitam suffix. You see, this is kulan asurin mitam suffix, not because of the gezerah. And therefore you need 3 levels to get 2 suffix and also have a rov.
So
Now-
to clarify, just to clarify, the first one is forbidden because it has quasi deoraita status, right? Second
Right.
one's forbidden because you only have one suffix. And the
Mhm.
third one, you get the sveka, and then you're good to go.
That's right. That's right. That's the Rambam. But now look, the Rambam contradicts himself. And we, of course, we briskers love that because we can try to figure that out. So look at this next Rambam.
All right. Safek avodat kochavim asur asur sfek sveka mutar. All right. So ketzad. How does this work? Echidami. Tabat shel avodah zara nitarva bechama tabaot. So you have a avodah zara ring. It gets mixed up with, or coin, whichever one it is, gets mixed up with a bunch of others. Matbeh versus tabat. But v'naflu shtayim mihen layam hagadol hutru kulan. And if two of them fall into the yam hagadol, into the sea, and they're destroyed, then everything is permitted. Shani omer ota tabat hayta bichlal hashtayim. So I say that, okay, so the avodah zarah one was one of those two. Rabbi Nachum, your battery is running low.
Yes.
Didn't quite last this year.
Okay. So wait a second. So is this, so here he says you need two. Just say three. He didn't say three, he said two.
Well, I guess the original like the tarovet is safek in that case. The gzera was not
Yeah,
not to
so
make them
actually, now that I explained it the way I explained it, we see there's no kasha.
Yeah.
We see there's no kasha at all because, but on a simple level, everybody's bothered by this. But I just explained it now. I just said, well, because here, there's no gezerah. Here, there's just a din. The din is, the din, what's the din? The din is that if it's one tabat into a mixture is a suffix, so it's usher. And it's usher to eat it, and but if there's a second level, so it's fake, that's mutter. There's no gezerah of devar chashuv here, creating that status.
Mm-hmm.
So the Kesef Mishnah didn't agree with me. The Kesef Mishnah says he's choser bo.
Wow.
The Rambam is choser bo, and the halacha is like what he says in Ma'achalot Asurim, that it's three levels. And that's why the Kesef Mishnah, who is the Mechaber, paskins that you need, like the Rambam, three levels.
I have trouble believing that the Rambam, who we have hand edits from him, that he would be, Chazarbo on one place and not in another, right? It's like,
well, you know the joke. Only if that's how a Frank would answer a kasha in the Rambam. That's not an acceptable answer.
It's
know that. You know the joke. Did I
No,
tell
I
you the
know
joke?
the joke.
You do it? You do
No,
it?
I don't know the joke. No.
The joke is that the Brisker Rav goes to Shemayim, and he's had bothered by this question that if Rambam says one thing in one place and one thing in another place, and he can't understand it, and then Moshe Rabbeinu comes to meet the Brisker Rav, he says, no, I want to see the important man. And so, Eliyahu Hanavi comes and says, no, I want to see the important man. And oh, you must meet the Rambam. So he goes to the Rambam sitting in the corner, reading a book. And he says, Rambam, tell me, Rav Moshe, how could you write this over here and this over there? And the Rambam looks carefully, looks at both places. Actually, it's a Taut Sofrim. I didn't write that. I wrote the thing. And so the Brisker Rav says, only a Frank could answer a question in the Rambam like that.
What's a Frank?
A Frank is a Sephardi because the Rambam is a Sephardi. Of course, that's a racist joke, but it's sort of not racist because he's admiring the Rambam. His whole life is the Rambam. So it's kind of plays with your mind there a little bit. But the point is, yes, this is not a very good answer for a Rambam. So I have given a better answer, right? The Shach says, Echmiru be'isrei achila. He has a different answer. He says, because it's Isser Achila, we require more. By the Avodah Zarah, that's just, you're not eating it. So you're having hana from it, but that's like a lesser stringency. So I said like the Gra. Isur chashuv, chachamim asum ki isur deraita. That's the ground sifkat in yud. In other words, they turned it into asaum. They turned it into an isur deraita, and therefore there's no suffix there anymore. The Pri Megadim says a different answer. Lashon haramba mishtane, because in one place he says nafal, and the other place he says piresh. Let's see if that's true. Naflu shtayim. And what did he say before? He said
Nafal.
It's definitely not foul.
Nafal. Yeah.
also nafal here.
Yeah.
Clearly a type itself there.
Yeah, I mean, no, it could be he actually has a different version of the Rambam.
I don't know. Okay, well, basically the Pri Megadim's answer is that in one place it's lifanenu and in one place it's not lifanenu. In other words, if it's lifanenu, then you need 3. And then we're after our question. So why did the Mechaber, Lama Mechaber Posek Kamo Rambam Paul, we just read, but in Sif Dalit, he was like the Rashba, that he said you only needed 2. And we already answered that. What did we answer? We said that by the animals, we said that was a different case. That was a case of Kavua. And maybe, we sort of said the same thing. We said, maybe by Devar Chashuv, he is posketing that you need 3, and maybe the Devar Kavua is like Avodah Zarah. Or like we said before, like the Shach himself said, that it's a Chidush, and therefore we're not going to be more Machmir there. The only problem is that the Devar Chashuv is based on Kavua, so it's hard to differentiate them. The Taz says the halacha is like what we're just reading, that you need 3. Okay, we're sort of out of time, so we didn't get to Tet. That's where we talked about the gufo. But I mentioned that to you, that there's 3 kinds of Isurim. All right, anyway, I think we did a nice job here today. These halachos are not particularly common, but we do get interesting ideas, I think, about what is a sveika. I think that's very important. And like we said, it has to be oto inyan. Has to be the same matter. Can't be two completely different things. And also, I said before, there's a machloket whether everybody agrees that if it's 2 tarovot, that's a sfeik sveika, and if it's 2 goof, then it's sfeik sveika. But if it's a goof and a tarovet, so there's a machloket in the achronim whether we're machmir or mekel, right? And I also mentioned that the Aruch HaShulchan brought to my attention that there's a machloket between the Rambam and the Rashba, that the Rambam holds that any safek deraita l'chumra is the Rabbanan, because really safek deraita is actually mutter min Torah. The Torah only prohibited vadai things, says the Rambam, and the Rashba says no. Torah also prohibited a safek. And there are proofs to either side. All right, so we'll stop here. Next week is the next Siman, and it's going to be Lexi is actually going to present. The follow after Pesach, we won't meet again till after Pesach, and then what I want to do, if you guys want to, is divide up that Siman. It's very important. Siman is like the beginning of Basar B'Chalav. So maybe I'll divide it up and I'll send to you. Is that agreeable? Yeah, okay.
That's
Okay,
not for next week. Next week we're on for normal.
next week we do have class.
Yeah.
That's next week is Lexi, and then after Pesach will be, I'll send you the date.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, sure. Laila Tov.
Mr. Koch, thank you.
Sure. Koach to everybody.
Thank you.